What about the people who have worked all of their lives, paid into the state, pensioners? How can you justify taking away up to £300? You mentioned that you are dedicated to providing a government service for working people. You must have mentioned working people at least 13 times.
Keir Starmer's face turns a shade of crimson as the reporter's questions hit like rapid fire. His composure crumbles, revealing a politician caught in the crosshairs of his own promises.
He remained defiant, repeatedly refusing to apologise for taking hundreds of pounds away from pensioners.
Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great! Thank you so much. Now, back to the video, but what's really behind Starmer's meltdown? As we peel back the layers of political spin,
for millions of pensioners is going to come under fresh scrutiny when Labour Party members in just a couple of hours vote on whether or not to reverse it. And as we've been saying, ministers are bracing themselves for an embarrassing defeat.
We inherited a really damaged economy. We did an audit and we discovered an undisclosed £22 billion black hole this year.
We uncover a $22 billion economic black hole that threatens to swallow pensioners' winter fuel allowance. Stay tuned as we expose the stark reality behind Starmer's immigration claims and the true cost of his policies. Keir Starmer has been making bold claims about his ability to control illegal immigration, but the reality paints a starkly different picture. In recent public statements, Starmer confidently asserted that he could stop the boats crossing the English Channel. He's presented himself as the solution to the UK's immigration woes, promising swift action and concrete results. But how do these lofty declarations stack up against the cold, hard facts? The latest immigration statistics tell a troubling tale. Net immigration to the UK reached a staggering 728,000 in the year leading up to June 2023. Even more alarming, the population swelled by 96,000 in just a single year. These figures aren't just high, they're knocking on the door of the previous long-term immigration record. The numbers raise serious questions about Starmer's ability to deliver on his promises. When we look at the situation on the ground, the gap between Starmer's rhetoric and reality becomes even more apparent. Recent months have seen record-breaking numbers of small boat arrivals on UK shores. These crossings, far from being stopped, are increasing at an alarming rate. It's a crisis that seems to be spiraling out of control, despite Starmer's assurances to the contrary. So how does Starmer plan to explain this glaring discrepancy? His approach so far has been less than convincing. Political commentator Isabel Oakeshott has been particularly critical, pointing out that Starmer's focus on individual arrests is more about political theatre than genuine solutions. She argues that this superficial approach fails to address the systemic issues, allowing illegal immigration to persist. Recent interviews have exposed Starmer's struggle to defend his position. As critics demand concrete solutions, he's been caught flat-footed, offering vague promises instead of detailed plans. His continued optimism appears increasingly disconnected from the situation on the ground, leading many to question his leadership and ability to manage the crisis effectively. The immigration issue has become a political minefield for Starmer. His optimistic rhetoric is colliding head-on with the harsh realities of increasing illegal crossings. As public scrutiny intensifies, Starmer faces mounting pressure to bridge the widening gap between his words and actions. But the immigration crisis, as daunting as it is, may just be the beginning of Starmer's troubles. A financial storm is brewing on the horizon, threatening to engulf his ambitious plans for the country. Just as Starmer thought he was navigating choppy waters with immigration, a financial tsunami has appeared on the horizon. A $22 billion black hole has materialized in the UK's finances, threatening to swallow whole chunks of the government's spending plans. But here's the kicker. Nearly half of this deficit stems from the current government's own decisions. How will Starmer explain this to a public already skeptical of his promises? The discovery of this massive shortfall has sent shockwaves through Westminster. It's not just a minor setback, it's a potential game-changer that could force Starmer to make some very unpopular decisions. His ambitious plans for the country, from bolstering public services to supporting vulnerable populations, now hang in the balance. The consequences of this financial crisis are far-reaching. We're looking at potential cuts to essential public services, increased taxes, or both. It's a bitter pill for a nation already struggling with the cost of living crisis. Starmer now faces a stark choice: address the deficit head-on or risk ignoring it at the nation's peril. Either way, the political fallout could be severe. What's particularly galling is that $9 billion of this deficit, nearly half, is due to the current government's decision to grant public sector workers pay rises exceeding inflation. While these raises might have been necessary, they've created a financial hole that Starmer now has to fill. It's a classic case of inheriting your predecessor's problems, but the public rarely sees it that way. As the pressure mounts, rumors are swirling about potential sacrifices to balance the books. One controversial proposal that's emerged is cutting the winter fuel allowance for pensioners. This lifeline, crucial for many elderly citizens facing rising energy costs, is now on the chopping block. The mere suggestion has sparked outrage among the public, who feel that the elderly shouldn't bear the brunt of austerity measures. Critics are quick to point out the seeming hypocrisy of Starmer's position. On one hand, he emphasizes the need for austerity to balance the books. On the other, he continues to focus on costly initiatives like migrant housing. It's a delicate balancing act that's becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. The public backlash is just beginning, and it's clear that Starmer's leadership is facing its greatest test yet. As promises collide with harsh realities, the coming months will reveal if he can bridge the gap between rhetoric and results. One thing's for certain: the British public will be watching closely, ready to hold their leaders accountable for both their words and actions. As Keir Starmer faces the perfect storm of immigration woes and economic turmoil, his leadership is under intense scrutiny. The coming months will be crucial, testing his ability to bridge the widening chasm between his bold promises and the harsh realities on the ground. With the 2024 Paris Paralympics and upcoming discussions with European leaders on the horizon, Starmer's handling of these crises will likely define his political future. Experts predict that failure to address these pressing issues could lead to significant backlash, not just from the public, but from within his own party. The stakes couldn't be higher for Starmer as he navigates the treacherous waters of public opinion and political maneuvering. In these turbulent times, it's more important than ever for citizens to stay engaged and informed. By participating in local forums, signing petitions, and contacting their representatives, voters can play a crucial role in shaping the national conversation on immigration and economic policies. After all, in a democracy, it's not just politicians who bear responsibility. It's up to all of us to hold our leaders accountable for their words and actions.